All right, so now let's get to your questions. There's two questions, both actually quite fun. So the first question is from Emma. In this question, we're speaking about whether a landlord, and we get this quite a lot, when we're dealing with estate agents or letting agents manage properties, manage leases, manage rentals. So this question is, can a landlord cancel a letting agent, so cancel their mandate? So this is the letting agent that's managing the property, and rather give the mandate to another agent, even though the mandate that you're canceling, the agent's mandate that you're canceling, was responsible for placing the tenants, right? So that's a big one. So can you cancel a management mandate if that management agent actually placed the tenants? And in this instance, the lease term has expired. That's also relevant, but the tenants have indicated their willingness to renew the term of the lease.
Perfect. So where I want to start with this is just touching on the different agreements that exist in the relationships, because this is one of the things that sometimes gets a little bit confused. And it's important that there's a distinction and you know exactly what agreements are in place, because there are two separate agreements that exist in a relationship between a letting agent, a landlord, and a tenant. Okay. The first is the lease agreement. Very common. Okay. The lease agreement is a contract which is entered into between the landlord and the tenant only. Okay. There's sometimes confusion and there's additions of the agent into a lease agreement, which is unnecessary in the circumstances. The agent really has nothing to do with the lease agreement whatsoever. That's one agreement. And then there is a distinct and separate agreement that exists between the letting agent in the circumstances and the landlord. Okay, the tenant doesn't form part of this agreement whatsoever. Okay, so they're two separate agreements, and while they are they're linked to one another in a way, they are not contingent upon one another in any way whatsoever. So they are completely separate. They exist by themselves. So in that circumstance, okay, just because something happens on a particular lease agreement does not necessarily mean that it directly affects the mandate. Okay, so in this particular circumstances, there's been a lease agreement. There was a mandate in respect of the previous occupation of the tenants in respect of this particular premises. Can the landlord cancel their mandate with the particular agent? Yes. Okay. It's this agreement that's entered into between the landlord and the agent specifically, and it's a mandate. It's in the name. So the landlord gives a mandate for someone to act on their behalf, to perform certain functions on their behalf, and they are entitled to cancel that mandate at any particular point. Okay, whether the tenant, in terms of the lease agreement, remains in occupation of the premises or left the premises or whatever the case is, that's a wholly distinct question. Okay. So yes, a landlord can proceed to cancel their mandate, and they're entitled to give their mandate and the authority to act on their behalf to someone else if they choose to do so in the circumstances. What's happening here with the tenant? Absolutely different question. The tenant can continue to occupy the premises, and the landlord can give the mandate to another agent to act on their behalf for any period going forward. So in this particular question, it is convenient, I suppose, that the lease term has expired in full, but that's not really here nor there. The landlord is entitled to cancel a mandate with an agent and give a mandate to someone else if they so choose to do so. What I will say, and what we say to our agents all the time, please make sure you are using proper, effective mandate agreements. Okay. Go and get if you need mandate agreements, you're not using them, go look out there. TPN has them. You can speak to either of our offices. We'll assist you with the drafting of the mandate to make sure that in the event that there is a premature cancellation of a mandate, so halfway through the management period, there's a cancellation or a termination or whatever the case is, you need to have good agreements in place that make sure that that the cancellation or termination early is envisaged in the agreement, and it sets out what happens with your management or a procurement commission in the event of an early cancellation. Okay, and that's all part of the agreement that you have with the landlord. So please make sure you speak to one of our officers and get yourself a proper mandate that's in place so that it accounts for what happens in those circumstances, because then that will deal with what happens to your commissions.
Awesome. All right.